I'm Stephen Foskett, organizer of Gestalt IT and Tech Field Day, and we are here at Commvault GO 2019 in beautiful Denver, Colorado. As you can see, we are literally in the mountains in Denver. We have a campfire, we have benches, we have logs with wheels underneath them. It is authentic mountain lifestyle right here. And just as most people do when gathering around the campfire, today we're going to talk about moving backup and recovery to SaaS in the cloud. I know that's something that many songs have been sung about and folk tales have been made, but we're going to take our own unique spin on this topic here during this Campfire Session for Commvault GO. But first I'm going to have each of them introduce themselves. Karen, why don't you start?
Okay. Hi, I'm Karen Lopez. I'm Data Chick on Twitter, and I blog at datamodel.com, and I call myself a data evangelist. That just means I love my data.
Hi.
Bart, you're next.
I'm Bart Heungens, based in Belgium, blogging at bitcon.be. Twitter handle is the same, Bart Heungens. And I'm an on-premise guy. And we'll see what we can do with SaaS in the cloud.
Okay.
And my name is Josh Fidel. I am a principal solutions architect for Rota Advisix. Previously with VMware. Prior to that, I was with CDW. I've been in IT for about 22 years. And I don't really care what you're going to use as long as it solves your business problems and gives you outcomes that are beneficial.
So you're cutting ahead of everybody, man.
Oops,
we haven't
sorry.
even asked the questions yet. So one of the things that Commvault talked about this morning, they made a big announcement actually yesterday morning, which is the Commvault Metallic, which is basically a SaaS version of Commvault's products, intellectual property. They probably wouldn't want it to be said to be like a SaaS version of Commvault because it's a lot more than that, as they've talked to us. But one of the things that came up in our discussions, the Tech Field Day discussions about Metallic, was this question of whether companies are ready to have data be in the cloud and all that entails. So first, I don't know, who wants to start off by just giving us a sense of why would somebody be nervous about having their data in SaaS or in the cloud?
That's a Karen question.
Okay.
Karen, question?
So I think that the belief system is somehow the cloud is less secure, and I don't really buy into that, having seen a lot of mid-sized data centers, which sometimes are still servers under people's desks. But I think the other thing is they're worried about data sovereignty, they're worried about where their data is going, they're worried about who might have access, are your cloud hosts sneaking through your data, those sort of things. But I think there's really good response. Like, we're far enough in the cloud story and the data stories to know that there are mitigations for all those things.
Do you all agree?
Well, yes, I agree. I see two challenges. The first one is about that security indeed. I visited a lot of data centers as well, and they play on that security, but most of the time it's about physical security, which is really good. But at the other hand, your data comes in through that network cable, and also that network cable needs to be protected. And there often the provider of the solution, definitely if it's a data center, they just say, yeah, you just put your network gear in there and you're responsible for the security. And that's the biggest challenge, because who is responsible? And this is as well for Commvault, if they still have backup targets on premise and now as well in the cloud. What about their security on software level, not only on physical security?
So one question I'll bring up, a lot of the things that you guys are talking about are basically the questions that people might have about data locality in the cloud, period. But what about specifically with regard to backup and recovery data? Are there different requirements for data protection data than for primary data?
Well, if we talk about data protection, when I go to see my customers, yes. You also need to mention RPO and RTO, recovery point, recovery time objective, because that's also important. It's not about having a copy of a data, but also how often you want to make a copy, and then if you have a problem, how long does it take before you get it back? And then you need to know, if you go to a SaaS offering, which cloud provider that you will be using, and which guarantees that you have of how fast can you get your data back, let it be just one file, or complete server with an application, with a database, with everything behind it. Because this has definitely an impact on RPO and RTO of your data protection solution.
So I think we're discussing it. I view backup as something completely different than disaster recovery. Now, disaster recovery, there's an incident, I lose a server, I lose a drive, I lose files. That's when the RPO, RTO argument comes in. But for backup, it's simply having another copy of my data that if I need to, I can access it. So I'm not sure that the cloud backup SaaS model actually covers DR type events. And is that what we really need to protect against, is these DR type events? Now, Jane from accounting, deletes the wrong file. Okay, I can go out to my SaaS provider, I can recover that file. It may take a little while, but that's just one file. I'm not going to use this for my entire environment. And if you are, that seems to me to be kind of foolish.
Wow. So, okay, I'd like to argue with both of you. How's that?
Woohoo! Arguments.
Yay!
Yeah, so here's the thing. Gosh, I don't even know where to start. So your original question was, is there a difference between primary data, the security needs for primary data versus your backups or anything? And as a data person, to me, data is data, whether it's wearing a hat of being a backup or wearing the hat of being in a production system. So yes, it needs to be protected just as much as the business or the law requires it. For whether people would use a SaaS or backup to the cloud, so I'm going to separate out SaaS, the service of running the backups and doing the restores. Mm-hmm. But do they need to back up to the cloud? Yes, we have lots of examples where natural disasters have meant that your local, either on-prem or local-ish backups are no longer accessible. So the further away a true backup can be, the more reliable it is for restoring you back to operations.
So now we're it almost feels like we're arguing semantics here.
Yeah. That's a data person.
That's a data person.
That's what data
Semantics
people do.
is what
As an infrastructure guy. No, I mean, if you look at what most companies do today, they have Site A, which is primarily production, and then they have Site B, which is, it could be DR, it could be hot with failover either direction. Yeah. Why do I want to throw that added complexity of, here, send it up here too? Okay, if something takes out Site A, be it a hurricane, a tornado, whatever, I'm still able to run it at Site 2. Or if something takes out Site 1 and Site 2, I would argue that you have bigger problems than worrying about, can I get my data down from the cloud?
But you're also now combining the concepts of high availability, which is the failover story, right?
Right.
With disaster recovery. So one of the things, high availability doesn't protect you from somebody running a query and forgetting the where clause and corrupting the data. So I don't mean database corruption. I mean a failed update, a failed load. That high availability makes that corruption highly available. So I see disaster recovery not just downtime, but also recovering from failed data operations as well.
Okay, that makes sense. I can see that.
Because then we can open up the discussion about, we have indeed multiple storage vendors who allows replication of data across their two systems. But if you have that, let's say, synchronous replication, if I get ransomware here, it gets replicated over there. So you need at that moment a copy. It can be in a physical third location or in the second location or even in the first location. Yeah. But
or in the cloud.
Or in the cloud, of course.
With an air gap.
With an air gap in between, right?
Which is becoming more and more important.
Definitely.
Does this make sense to everyone?
No, I'm good. I'm just enjoying listening to you guys. So just to get it back on topic though, we're specifically contrasting versus cloud and SaaS, and to me the key here is sort of implicit in the SaaS concept. It's not do I have my backup data replicated or am I have it on site or off site? The key question to me is, am I ready for a service provider, whether it's SaaS or infrastructure or platform, or something else? Am I ready to have a service provider be responsible for backup and recovery?
Do you trust that service provider? Do you have an ironclad contract that guarantees certain SLAs, RPOs, RTOs for your data? I mean,
Yeah.
and if they don't adhere to that contract, are there significant financial penalties for them such that it is in their best interest to maintain those things? So trust but verify?
You got to check the SLA that you have at this moment. So if you have a solution today which is not SaaS to protect the data of your users, your customers, your clients, take a look at the SLA. What are the agreements that you have with them now? 1 day, 1 week, how many copies, where? Now you got to check that those agreements, that they also fit in the agreement of the SaaS provider. If they can have the same level of availability and protection of the data. Otherwise, it will be a challenge.
I agree.
And I think that trust is also, like, right now in the Commvault, the Metallic offering, they're going for mid-market, right? So
3
they're-
nines.
Yeah, but they're going 3 nines, I get that. But a typical mid-market company usually has a jack of all trades type sysadmin who's managing. And one of the things I say is that we don't need backups. We need recovery, right? So being facetious here, you know, is your current Jack or Jill of all trades, are they, you know, testing their recovery? Are you funding that? Do you give them the lab space? Are you, do they have 3 nines availability for every single piece of data, including endpoint backups, including O365? Are they, you know, like that's where I see backup as a service and recovery as a service really hitting a sweet spot, because most, you know, whatever it is, 300 to 500 user organizations don't have that.
Yeah, and that actually leads me to argue the other side of the equation. So far I've been pointing out, you know, do you trust it? You know, can you trust it? Is this a good idea? But, you know, to flip it entirely over and to take the other perspective, I like to often, when people argue about SaaS and cloud and so on, I like to kind of give them the metaphor of the bank, right? You know, if you have, you know, if you've got a big pile of money, is it better to store it in your closet or is it better to store it in the bank? Well, if it's in the bank, then, you know, somebody could steal it, but theoretically banks are better at managing large piles of money than you are, and theoretically they have better resources and they have better experience and all these other things, and all that can be said of SaaS and service providers as well. I mean, this is what they do, you know. I mean, Commvault backs up data, you know.
Yeah.
You know, that's pretty
For a
good.
living.
Yeah, indeed. Somehow they make their money at that. I don't know.
But they do it as well on premise. And it's just now because a lot of other vendors as well are jumping onto the SaaS and the cloud bandwagon, that also Commvault needs to do this. And I think they have a good offering now with Metallic, of at least what we have seen yesterday and today already. But the question will be, yeah, those companies, the mid-market, who have most of the time already a solution on-premise, will they want to trade everything into that SaaS offering? Because normally it will be an all or nothing thing. I cannot imagine that a customer will say, that a company will say, we'll leave everything what we have now and we'll put the SaaS offering on top of it.
I don't think that's what they're saying. Do you guys want to jump in on that?
I think they're saying we're going to be your solution.
Yes.
You think so?
Yeah, I think that's what they want to do. I think they want to, and I see this a lot with all. You see it with Rubrik, you see it with Cohesity, you see it with EMC a little bit with their what's their new one, IDP Data Protect, something like that. They've got a new, and here, stick our box in your data center. We'll cache your hot backup data here, and then we're going to trickle it up to the cloud. And that seems to be the model that all these backup vendors want to go to. I mean, you know, way back in the day, and I see some of us with gray hair, so we know this. Remember, you know, you had to have a box full of disks, and that was your target for your backup software.
Discs.
Right?
You're not going back far enough, my friend.
Okay. Robotic tape libraries, right?
Yeah. CERN still uses it.
But but
chisels and hammers.
chisels and hammers and clay tablets, right? But no, we want to change that. Here's an appliance. We'll manage it for you. You have access to the management control plane, so you can say, here's what we're backing up, and then we'll trickle it up to the cloud, but you're not responsible for any of it. And in most small and medium shops where you've got 1, 2, 3 IT guys doing everything from virtualization to network administration to database administration, that may be worth the cost to offload that responsibility from your IT staff and let them handle it.
And have also professionals that are monitoring and alerting and doing all the administration of backups and restores and researching the threat models that they have to protect against. Like, it's just such an overwhelming responsibility to, whether you're a DBA or a storage admin, when you're in a small shop and you wear lots of hats.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many hats can you wear before they start to fall over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that being said, that actually brings up something really interesting, because both of you said that, not to be too on target here with the specific offering with Commvault Metallic, but one of the pitches that I heard, at least in talking to the Commvault folks, was that this would not be the only Commvault instance for a company. This would not take over everything, or that this would be like sort of part of it, or would be for special uses or special cases, and that the benefit was that it was all Commvault, whether it was on premises or in the cloud, or SaaS or not SaaS, and that it would all be the same thing. And so to me, that means that they're not intending people to just say, you know what, get rid of this stuff. We're going to go all SaaS. I think they're intending for this to be a sort of an adjunct for existing
hybrid
customers.
solution
Yeah,
of
hybrid.
using both technologies.
Yes, I think so.
And unless
Is
I
there
heard it wrong,
hybrid
I don't know,
cloud
did anybody else
backup?
hear
This-
differently?
I've heard that before.
I've heard those things, yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny, because that's not how it was described to me by some other Commvault people.
Uh-oh, we got a
They
problem here.
they described it to me as Metallic is the entry point. It's the stepping stone. If you're a small, medium-sized business, go with Metallic. As you grow Metallic, eventually you'll hit a point where you've grown large enough that Commvault Enterprise makes sense to your environment, to your organization. So I kind of view it as like it's the gateway drug for Commvault.
But I could see it working that way as well, but I don't think that's an exclusive path.
That's exclusive use case, yeah.
Yeah.
None of it has to be exclusive, but I could definitely see it working that way too, especially with the sign up on a website and so on. Does anybody have a comment about this? Anybody want to jump in on this? We got this thing, so we can throw this at you, and you can. Okay,
We're both right.
All right, I like that answer.
Wonder
That's a
Twin
good answer.
Powers.
Yeah. So, all right, and that being said, I do think, especially, let me just give you a specific use case. Office 365 data
Exactly.
provisioned through a web portal. That's just a slam dunk use case in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but the fact that you can protect a user's data for less than $50 a year.
Mhm.
That really sets the bar.
And the unlimited backups was the other
That's the even better
amazing.
bar.
At
No
their
caps.
cloud.
At their cloud. You pay for the storage, but they're not limiting it.
Yeah, so let's take this on. So we had a bunch of questions in our discussion with Commvault about Metallic when it came out. By the way, if you go to techfieldday.com or YouTube/techfieldday, you can actually see that presentation. You can see these people asking those discussions of the people that presented on stage today about Metallic. So let's talk about that some more. So I love the thing that you came up with there, the
Which one?
unlimited.
Unlimited. So they're claiming for O365 and endpoints, was it? Or just O365?
I think it was just
I think it was just
O365.
O365. Yeah.
So the way Metallic works is you're paying for the software as a service, but not the storage, because you provision your own storage, whether it's Azure or whatever cloud or their cloud or on-prem, so that they aren't limiting how old the number of backups are for O365. Built into O365, there's a limit to how long you can back it up and how hot that backup is. And it all depends on whether you have compliance holds on it or whatever. But they're claiming unlimited, and my question for them is this going to be like data caps on your unlimited data plan, where they're going to do something to keep you from storing literally.
You're going to drop down to 3G.
You're going to drop you down to really slow. It'll be like Glacier. It'll be really slow. No, I'm making that up. But still, I mean, if they are truly a software as a service, there really isn't any reason, and you're not paying them for the storage. There's no real reason for them to put that back up, that limitation, I think. Which makes me wonder why they're putting a limitation on SQL Server backups and perhaps endpoints. What do you think? Why do you think?
You got to ask them.
Oh, you're asking
why
me?
it's
Yeah.
not limited. So
I didn't want to talk about the whole thing.
If something's too good to be true, it generally is. That's the cynical IT guy
You
in
met
me.
my grandmother.
I think they're thinking that it's just going to be self-limiting. I think
Well,
that's what they're
especially
looking
email
at.
and
Yeah.
stuff. Like most attorneys are telling companies, get rid of the emails as soon as legally possible, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
most attorneys are wrong.
now I have one question about that. So you're gonna pay per month for your data protection of, let's say, Office 365 or your endpoint. Although you should ask, what will happen with the data at one moment in time if I don't pay my
Yeah, you
monthly
asked that in
cost
the meeting
anymore?
earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
What do you think?
And so, yeah, we didn't get 100% answer, at least as far as I know, is let's say I'm a bank, I need to keep my data for 5 years. So does that mean that I need to pay as well for 5 years at least? Or after 3 years, I decide to go to another solution? Is there an option that I can get my backup data outside the metallic cloud, if we call it like that? Because at the end, I am the owner of that backup data of all those years. Yeah, so there's one thing that you need to think about as well when you decide to go to a SaaS, to a cloud solution, is it's your data, but you're paying to put that data over there. Can I get it back? In what conditions?
But isn't that the whole storing your data with somewhere else anyway, whether it's a local data center, whether it's Azure or AWS, like they all have the cloud, I won't even say cloud, the third-party storing of your data always has to deal with that thing, with no payment or failed payments.
Well, and not to be the devil's advocate, but let
But,
me tell you,
yeah.
if you don't pay your rent on your data center, that's going to get repossessed too.
Yeah.
You know?
But because this happened to me recently, if your credit card you've replaced your credit card, you start getting these notices, right? Your payment failed, and I went and looked up for O365, like how long can you get at your data? Because I recently ran out of money on a subscription. So it's like for 30 days, you can just catch up your payments and it's all the same. And then there's longer and longer times about how long they withhold the data. And then I know with Azure, with storage blobs, there's a little bit of vague language about we can't guarantee we can get this data for you, but we don't actively go and delete it, right? So you should always log a support request to see if any data. But you probably have to bring your accounts current, right?
Your
And
data?
that seems fair to me.
Yeah, I think I saw it over in the corner over there.
Yeah, exactly.
Look for it.
I told them it's on the Purple server.
Yep.
If there's not an indemnification clause for loss of data inside the contract, is it
Yeah.
truly trustworthy?
Yeah.
You mean the ULA?
The what?
The user agreement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have some questions?
That's a question.
Oh, we got a question. Here, ready? We're going to try this thing.
Maybe I'm missing it, but isn't it a moot point that if you terminate the contract, you're paying for the storage, so wherever you're storing your data, you have the access to it, you just don't have access to Commvault.
Good point.
Depending on who encrypted it.
I mean, but he's
Right.
but he's right.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's your storage, you still got the data,
Yeah.
or you've still got the responsibility to still get the data because
Yeah.
if it's on your Azure account or your whatever,
That is true. Yeah.
So
Good point.
yeah, do you still
Okay.
have the keys?
So what
That's
if
what
the
I
data
meant.
is
Yeah.
encrypted, your keys exist in Commvault, you lose your Commvault, you lose your keys, now all you have is a bunch of...
But this is why all cloud security is a shared security model. And you have to manage keys, or if your cloud vendor manages the keys, you have to manage your cloud vendor managing your keys.
I have a big head, but even I can't wear that many hats.
You want it back? All right.
Oh, did you turn it off?
I think for Commvault, probably the more appropriate question is how long I would have access to my data at the end of that contract for just that case. If
Yeah.
I have specific retention policies, but my contract is with Commvault is coming to an end, you will probably need to contact your Commvault representative to ask those specific questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some
At
sort
least to
of
be able to
decline to
extract your data.
renew process and what happens. No,
Someone
that makes
should
sense. That's a
blog
good call.
about this, Stephen.
Yeah, that's a good topic for a blog post.
Mhm.
If only I knew a blogger.
No idea.
There are plenty of them over there.
All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything that they want to jump in on? This thing actually works.
There's
All
one.
right, here you go. Ready? No, I'm not going to throw it that far. Here we go.
Yeah.
I like throwing it though.
Oh.
Hey, it's okay though.
It's okay.
So on the Office 365 for Metallic, that does include storage. We put it on our Azure Blob storage, and you can export the data to PST EML file if you want to get it from Exchange, or the files directly from SharePoint or OneDrive can be exported at any point in time.
Yeah.
So the
excellent.
answer is
It's in your
yes.
story.
The answer is yes.
They heard about that. Yeah, and I'll say it again. I don't mean to like kind of just like at the risk of making a fire metaphor, blow smoke here, but I actually think the Azure or the 365 use case is really
Yes.
strong. I mean, we're
Yeah.
not a 365 company, but if we were for that money, I think it would be a slam dunk.
And I am, and I recently just researched, like, I need to get my stuff backed up, right?
Yeah.
And for that reason.
Yeah. So Google Drive, Gmail, we need that. Yep. Feature
what-
request.
What do you think about, because for Office 365 it looks obvious because Office 365 is in the cloud, that you put that copy in the cloud. What about on-premise virtual machines, SQL servers? What do you think about that?
What's
You
the
have
question? Do you want it in cloud?
You
or-
you have a database of 500 gigabyte or a terabyte on-premise. You want to make a backup in the cloud. What do you think?
No, sir. I don't like it.
You don't
So-
like it.
That's already a native feature in SQL Server, right? To back up to the Azure
Okay.
cloud, of course. But I don't want just in the cloud, right? You definitely, in a transactional database environment, you want a local copy for faster RPO and RTO.
There
You
you
might
go.
want one in the cloud because it's away, and you might want one, and you might want that backup as in Azure Blob Storage, which is what it uses, is geo-redundant because it's so critical to your business processes, right? So the answer is yes to both of your questions.
So back again, it's a hybrid solution.
Yes. And hybrid, not because you're trying to be cloudy, but because you want a fast way of putting data someplace else,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because that's really important. If mission critical data, like that runs your daily operations and keeps your customer happy, you don't want it just sitting in a sand next to your servers.
But here's my problem, and I'm sure all of us have heard this. How many of us have heard executives say, we're going everything to the cloud,
Oh yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
As the hand shoot up. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the worst possible thing an executive could say. That it shows a lack of understanding
Yeah.
of IT environments today. Now, hybrid, I like hybrid. If your CIO, CTO says, yes, we're going to do a hybrid cloud strategy, that I can get behind.
Yeah.
But anyone who says, yeah, we're all in on the cloud, I'm going to have to walk away.
There are some organizations like SaaS organizations, web organizations that are all their data's in the cloud because they built a company based on that. But a traditional enterprise that the business model doesn't usually support all in the cloud, like because of egress charges even.
Definitely.
Right? Yeah.
Okay, now if you were a technology-first, remote, distributed workforce, software development type company,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I could see that.
Yeah.
But generally, being from the Midwest, I have healthcare, manufacturing, insurance companies, things like that. They have offices, they have people on site, they need their data on site, they need their compute on site.
Yeah.
It's nice to have it there also.
Yeah.
But-
But for instance, even Amazon has on-prem databases and servers and everything. So even Microsoft has them as well.
Right.
So I mean, even the major cloud providers don't run all of their operations in the cloud.
So those of you who've been watching, thank you very much for watching. Do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make for this group? Any horror
Observation.
stories? Any excitement about Metallic or the whole idea of backup and recovery in SaaS?
Everybody seems thoughtful.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
all
They're
very
processing.
thoughtful.
Yeah.
Jeff's over here.
They're all watching your.
Well, if you do,
They're all checking my scoring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wrap this up a little bit then, and I'm gonna ask you guys to basically let's get back to the core question: are companies ready to move backup and recovery to SaaS in the cloud? And I want each of you to answer that question as best you can. And I'm gonna start by giving you a moment to think about it. And I'm going to recap what we've said. So the first thing we talked about was sort of the generic question of, do you trust stuff in the cloud? Which is really, really a generic question. I mean, that's we've been asking ourselves that for 20 years. Do you trust service providers? The whole, should you store your money under the mattress or in the bank metaphor, that kind of stuff. Then we talked a little bit more about the specific requirements of backup and recovery with regard to moving into the cloud. And we talked about performance, and we talked about RTO and RPO, and we talked about, the difference between backup and archive and disaster recovery. Then we talked about, sort of the different business models and the different applications for backup and recovery in the cloud. So after all this conversation, who wants to go first to give us your summary thoughts?
I'll
Bart.
go.
Yep.
My answer would be yes, but let it not be the only solution that you're using. So you got to understand that there's got to be as well something on-premise.
So yours is yes, but.
Yes, but.
I think
Yes,
all
but-
of ours is going to be yes, but. I'm
Yeah.
just going to go out on a limb.
And now you're going to say no, but.
Actually, I'm going to say
Maybe.
maybe.
It
It really
depends.
depends on what are the business goals you're trying to achieve. Does it give you the outcomes you desire? Yes or no? And you really have to take a long, hard look at it and weigh the benefits and the pros and the cons.
So I think as a data person, I'm going to question the question because that's what we do. So it's not a question, are companies, are legal entities ready? It's like, is there data and workloads that's ready to move to the cloud as hybrid or as SaaS only? Yes, there's that. And are there legal requirements? Are there legal restrictions? Like, it really isn't a company level decision. It is a data story related question.
See, where I thought you were going to go with that is actually the layer 8 question, which is it's not a question of are companies ready to do this. It's a question of are people ready to do this?
Oh, yeah.
Are
Okay.
people ready to trust, and to make this jump? And, we
There's
talked
that,
about
too.
this whole idea of, do you trust the same vendor or the same software with both your primary and your, backups data and so on? And I think that's really what it is. And I think we've been talking about this, like I said, for years.
Yes.
When it comes to cloud computing. The question is really, are people ready to make that jump? And are people ready to decide that this is something they can and should do?
It's always a people problem.
Exactly. The problem exists between keyboard and chair.
There you go.
So,
There you go.
so thank you guys for watching us. Any final comments? Any final thoughts from the audience? Well, thanks for joining us here. It's been a lot of fun to be part of the Campfire Session. I'll be back actually tomorrow at noon, hopefully right here, but maybe over at the other campfire, taking on another question with some of the folks from Tech Field Day. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, if you've enjoyed what these folks have to say, I strongly recommend going to youtube.com/techfieldday, and you'll find literally thousands of videos with people like these talking to companies like this about their products and asking these questions and posing these thoughts. And I think that you'll really enjoy it if you enjoyed this. So thanks for joining us. This video again is going to be posted at gestaltit.com. And you can find a lot more written news and information coverage there at our Gestalt IT website. So for me, Stephen Foskett, and the rest of the Gestalt IT crew, take care.